Good evening, all. Nice to see you here this evening. If you've got a question, please feel free to ask away. Type it in, and I will answer it. So, is this off-putting? This thing on Instagram, this tunnel thing? I quite liked it. It's been a bit of time. Oh God, sorry, let me plot your car in there. It's been a bit of time choosing it, but I don't know if it's off-putting. Well, here we go. We've got. Can I please what the maximum implant size for 32B could be in one surgery? Oh God, right, okay. It is off-putting. Okay, right. So therefore, I will take it off. Taking it off. There you go. Oh, hello. Oh God. Ewick. Yeah, good. Right. Yes. So, right, I've got to make a note of that. We've got a question. What is maximum size implant for a 32B in one surgery? Okay. Look at this. They're backing up. So I said I would answer this one first. So that's why I'm making note of that. So I've got one here I said I would answer first. So I'll make a note of that. Enhance. Yeah, it was a bit like that, wasn't it? So this is what I said I'd answer first. I think Amy's going to chunk it and send it to the patient because she's not here. Can I have a tummy tuck if I have hypermobile Ehlers Danlos syndrome? So Ehlers Danlos is a collagen disorder. Collagen is part of your skin that gives its elasticity, and so you have hyperelastic skin. So people with Ehlers Danlos can do that and pull the skin out, and hypermobile joints, and it can affect your wound healing. So you can have problems with wound healing. And there's a bit of an issue in terms of the mobility of your skin, the stretchiness of your skin. If it's too stretchy, then in terms of the healing of the wound. So the bottom line is, yes, you can have a tummy tuck if you have got Ehlers Danlos. But like I always say, with any medical problem, that we would check with the person who's looking after your Ehlers Danlos to see if there's anything we need to do, or if there's, because they are the expert in that condition. So it kind of depends on what they say. The surgery is often quite similar, although you will be at an increased risk of wound healing problems. So I will talk to you about that. Last week, or was it the week before, we had someone who had von Willebrand's disease, and I said the same thing, that we would check with the hematologist and the anaesthetist and what have you. We subsequently checked with the anaesthetist before I saw the patient in the clinic, and the anaesthetist said, look, you know what, there's potentially going to be a lot of issues going on here. The hospital said no, so that was actually a no before I even saw the patient. So it's, I often say, oh yeah, it should be fine by me, because often the surgery is quite similar, but the anaesthetist and the hospital might have a view on it. So the problem for me is I have done surgery on people with Ehlers Danlos, so it can be done. But to be honest with you, things have got a little bit more careful, I suppose. The hospitals and the anaesthetists are being much more careful. That's not so. Does that suggest they weren't careful before? Risk averse. I mean, I'm all for being risk averse because no one wants a risk. But at the same time, if we used to kind of say to patients, there are risks and balance it. But now, I think more and more people are being said that they can't do it in terms of the hospitals or the anaesthetists. So I think it's a thing of COVID, and I don't know what it is. But anyway, so on paper, yes, increased risk of wound healing issues. We'll talk you through that. I'll talk to the doctor who's looking after your Ehlers Danlos, talk to the anaesthetist, talk to the hospital. The other thing I'd say is, you do come to clinic and see me, and we can't do it because the hospital say no, or I say no, or I say something and you say, look, I don't fancy it. We will give you your money back for the consultation. So we won't, it's not that would love it with all anyway, because it's a bit unfair really, because it's not you that's saying no. Susie, what you said? Yes, Susie said something. I feel like a favourite. So looking forward to seeing you soon. You have 3 of us coming. I know, Susie. I've heard. Susie, you must get some kind of award for that, some kind of prize. Well done. Right. So what we got? So enhanced. Can I please ask what the maximum implant size for a 32B could be in one surgery? Well, to be honest with you, enhance. enhance with them? Is it? I always feel a little bit that's kind of like a red flag question for me. It's kind of like alarm bells, because I try and do kind of things in proportion, and I measure the width of your chest, and that would dictate the size of the implant that I could use. And then we look at shape and profile. So 32B doesn't really mean anything, although I would obviously 32, it means you're obviously quite slim. B, with a modest cup size, but I'd have to measure you in the clinic, and then you look at shapes and profiles. So if you're saying you want the biggest, which you are, would be an extra high profile round implant, and then it would be whatever size extra high profile implant would be that would match your base width. For me, I do like to respect the base width of the breast. So I do not put implants in wider than the base width of the breast. Some people do. And so if you're after the maximum, you might be better off seeing one of them, because I worry about disrespecting the base width of the breast, because if you put an implant in too wide, you can run into trouble. You can get synmastia, which is a web between the breasts. It can stick out too far on the side, and you can hit them and things like that. So you can get issues putting them in too wide. So I'm a bit cautious. I'll be honest with you. I'll be upfront with you here and now. I'm a bit cautious about that, because I've seen problems, and they're very difficult to correct problems once you've got them. And it sounds a bit like a bit churlish to say you'd be better off having it done right first, kind of thing, rather than getting into a problem and then trying to fix it. It's a nightmare. Once the pocket's been made too big, it's very hard to come back from that. So you're better off making the pocket right in first time. Having said that, there are people out there who do put in bigger implants than I do, and so if you're asking for the maximum, you're probably better off going with one of them. But if you're asking me, what I would do is I would measure the width of your breast, and I would respect that width, and I'd get, so the biggest implant would be the extra high profile. So there's teardrop and round for the same width. The round implant's got more volume than a teardrop, so you'd want a round implant on those grounds. And there's low, moderate, high, and extra high profile. So you want an extra high profile round implant for the width of your breast. So the width is different to the 32B thing. The width would be something we measure. It's distance across the sort of diameter of your chest. So that's how I would go about measuring that, and then I could maybe give you an idea of where you would be going. But I'll tell you now, if you want to be maxed out and very, big, that's not my specialty. It's not my forte. Here we go. Siobhan's got a question. With tuberous breasts, would you advise high profile implants or moderate, starting from 36B? Well, just shy of a B. No, I wouldn't necessarily, Sean. It's difficult because, yes, you need the breast to kind of, tuberous breast covers quite a wide spectrum of breast shapes. But the issue with tuberous breast is often constricted lower pole, herniation of the nipple areolar complex, and you really need to try and release that nipple areolar complex. You need to release that lower pole, and you want the implant to kind of stretch out that lower pole and give the lower pole back to the breast, which often hasn't got it. You've often got a nipple and then kind of nothing below the nipple. So you're trying to recreate that with your implant. So you do want the implant to sort of push and stretch on that. So I guess that's where you're coming from, saying, would you advise a high profile implant? But having said that, I wouldn't necessarily advise a high profile implant, because a high profile implant is a fuller, rounder look. So I would have a discussion with the patient to try and get the kind of look they want, because it's always a balance between trying to get the look they want and correcting the deformity. You don't want to correct the deformity and give them big rounded breasts that they don't like. So I wouldn't necessarily say, like, knee jerk, you would have a high profile implant if you've got a tuberous breast. I would be okay using a moderate profile implant. But I can see where you're coming from, because it's going to push more and maybe expand out the lower pole more. Is 425cc good, do you think? Very good question. That's enhanced with them, because 425, if someone says, what do you think, should I have a 425cc implant? That covers a multitude of implants. There's loads of 425cc implants. There's teardrop ones, round ones, low profile, high profile, moderate profile. So a 425cc low profile implant will be much wider than a 425cc extra high profile implant. That would be much narrower. So I would start with the width of the implant, not the volume of the implant. So I would start with the width, which would fit the your base width, and then I would look to see what volume that corresponds to, rather than going, yeah, 425 will be all right. So a lot of people, when they talk about, well, everybody, when they talk about implants, talks about volume, 425, 415, things like that. But actually, when I'm looking for someone and I'm sizing them for an implant, I start with the width, and then the shape and the profile, and then the volume. So that's the Trident approach. Yeah, that's the Trident approach. Width first, then shape and profile, and finally volume. So the volume is dictated by the width and the shape and the profile of the implant. So you don't start with volume. But in answer to your question, 425 sounds pretty big to me. If you're a 32B, I'd say that. But you obviously want to be pretty big. So yeah, sounds pretty big, I would say. Sounds you know, for a sort of knee-jerk reaction, I think, yeah, that sounds probably, if you want to be maximum, that sounds might be it, but can't say without sort of measuring you, etc. Also got some questions asked on the Ask a Question button, so thank you very much for that. I'm just going to read my writing. What do you think of donut stroke, crescent lift, and fat transfer? So I don't like the donut / crescent lift. One of the things that people often want in terms of surgery is less scarring. Not unreasonably. It's completely reasonable to want less scarring. I want less scarring. If I give you less scarring, there's less wounds to heal. Heal, recover more quickly. You're going to be happier because there's less scarring. So basically, when you do a breast lift, you have to move the nipple. So there has to be a scar around the nipple. So I guess the smallest scar you could have would be the crescent. So a crescent just literally takes a crescent from above the nipple and lifts that nipple up a bit. The problem when you're just taking a bit of skin from above the nipple and not below is that you worry that you might elongate the nipple a bit. So if you're just doing a crescent, you might elongate it a bit. And that really, for me, and this is all in my hands, people will be different. Some people might say, oh yeah, crescent's brilliant. For me, that would be maybe a tiny little asymmetry between the nipples. You might say, okay, I might try and lift that a little bit by just taking a little crescent out. So the crescent is just really to try and balance up an asymmetry of nipples. The crescent lift is not really a breast lift for me. It's not going to really lift the breast. It's certainly not going to do much to the dynamics of the shape of the breast. So then you've got your donut. So the donut lift takes a donut of skin. So it's a skin all the way, a scar all the way around the nipple. So it's a little bit more than the crescent. The crescent is just the top half. A donut is all the way around the nipple. But again, a lot of people like it because there's no sort of scars on the breast. It's all on the interface between the areola and the normal skin, and that can settle really quick, really quite well. And so you can't really, it can be hard to see that scar, which is really good. But I don't like the donut lift. The reason being that you're limited as to how much skin you can take out. The donut takes basically a donut of skin around the areola. So you suture a big circle into a small circle. So it's always a bit puckered, a bit like an areola reduction. Now those puckers do settle, but it's always a bit puckered to start off with. But it kind of flattens the breast. It dampens it down, doesn't give projection. So I don't think it gives a great shape. I think the better shape is when you put a vertical scar in and tighten the skin in the lower pole of the breast to try and give a bit more projection. So my starting point for a breast lift is a circumareola and then a straight down, so-called lollipop. And I often will have no problem about putting a horizontal scar on of varying lengths. So short T-scar or T-scar or anchor-shaped scar. So I am more of a lollipop / T-shaped scar person. I am really more focusing on the shape of the breast rather than minimizing the scars. Obviously, if you want to minimize the scars, don't have anything done. There's a spectrum. Don't have anything done. There's no scars. There's a lot of scars, and then in between you've got your minimum, lesser scarring ones. But the crescent and the circumareola for me is not giving you a good lift, so it's not worth doing in my experience. Now, a lot of people do it, so I'm not going to say it's bad for everybody. It's just in my experience, it's not great. Hiya, Alison. I hope you're okay, and I'm hoping it's all working okay. I should have said that in terms of audio and all that. So another question we've got on the little sticker on the story, which is can't tell you how exciting it is when we get people clicking on that story thing. Can you go from the same person asked the 2 questions, full disclosure, but still well done you. Can you go from dual plane to over the muscle in second surgery? So yeah, you can. Yeah, so basically you can change plane when you have another operation. So if you've got the implants on top of the muscle, you can put them under the muscle. If you've got them under the muscle, you can put them on top of the muscle. So you can change planes if you've got problems. So there are problems with putting implants under the muscle, animation deformities, implants sitting very wide, implants sitting high. So these are problems you can get when you put them under the muscle. So you might say, so I don't know what the problem is. So presumably you've got a problem with having them under the muscle. So that's why you're thinking of having them changed to be put over the muscle. So if you've got a problem, you think, oh, I'm going to put it over the top of the muscle. Absolutely fine. The only thing I would think about is you've got to think someone thought it was a good idea to put them under the muscle. And the reason someone thought it was good to put it on the muscle, I'm assuming, is because you're quite slim. You can kind of see the ribs and you worry about seeing rippling of those implants. So that's kind of why they put it under the muscle in the first place. Now, I accept you might have a complication from having them under the muscle in terms of the animation or whatever I'm seeing, but there's a potential complication with putting them on top of the muscle. It's not like one's better than the other. It's not like on top's better. Because if on top was better, they'd have done it to start off with. So on top is better in terms of the animation deformity and the wide and high thing, but it's worse in terms of rippling. So that's the only thing I'd be thinking of. If you think you're changing from under to over, I'd be a little bit concerned that you might then get rippling, you might start fixing the edge of the implant, stuff like that. So that is just something I would bear in mind, particularly if you are quite slim. Yes, it might cure your animation deformity or whatever the reason is that you're having the plane changed, but is it going to cause another problem? Is that why they put them under the muscle in the first place? In the house, I always forget the microphone. Alison's all good, just recovering. Alison, you recover, put your feet up, take it easy, let me do the heavy lifting. So what else we got? Oh God, sorry, Shahil, I was about to report you then. Sorry, pressed the wrong button. Right, we're into these questions here now. Can I have a breast reduction and breast implants at the same time? I don't know what you feel about this, Shahil, but I don't like it. It doesn't sit right with me. It is a thing. And you might say, hold on a minute, what are you talking about? Breast reduction and breast implants at the same time. What? Well, yes, it is a thing. And the reason it's a thing, because if you have a breast reduction or a breast lift, something that personally I always make a point of when I say to people having a breast reduction or a breast lift, I always point out the sort of shape that can be achieved when having that surgery. When you first have the surgery, you push all the volume up north. The implant, the breasts are sort of underneath your chin, and you might think, oh, that's good, but it always settles. When it's natural breast tissue, it always settles. So actually, to be honest with you, it looks a bit weird when you first have it done. And then it always settles to a natural breast shape, which is like a concavity in the upper pole. So that shape is what you'll get if you have a breast lift or breast implants. And sometimes people have in their mind the sort of shape you can get with implants, which is sustained fullness in the upper pole. It's like a bump in the upper pole. If there's like a convexity rather than a concavity in the upper pole, well, that is implants. And you, out of a bra, I might add, this is in a bra, you can get a convexity, but out of a bra, it always goes into a concavity. The breasts settle to what I would say is a natural breast shape. But this is a conversation we have to have pre-op, because you have to kind of accept that if you're going to have a breast lift or a breast reduction, because that you cannot get that bump in the upper pole, that fullness up there out of a bra without implants. In my hands, people do things all sorts when they do breast lifts to try and keep the volume up there, and they say anchor this and that, but I haven't found anything good to keep the volume up there. And in my hands, I would say you're going to have a convexity, and it's going to look natural, it's going to look better, it's going to look natural, it's going to look good, don't get me wrong. But if you've got in your mind this bump, that's implants. So some people say, well, hold on a minute, I want the bump, I want the implants thing. I'm like, yeah, well, if that's fine, but if I put implants in, what's going to happen? They're going to get bigger, aren't they? And you don't want to be bigger. In fact, you want to be smaller. If you want a breast reduction, you want a mastectomy, you don't want to be bigger. If you want a breast reduction, you want to be smaller. And you're saying you want the bump. If I put implants in, it's going to make it bigger. So what there is in the world out there is people who will put implants in, but then will reduce the breast. If you want to be the same size, or even if you want to be smaller, they will reduce the breast to the volume of the implant, take out the volume of what the implant is of natural healthy breast tissue, replace it with implant, and then do the reduction on top of the implant. So you end up the same size, but you have that bump. So that is a thing. So that is a breast reduction and breast implants at the same time. So that is a thing in the world. But I personally don't feel comfortable doing it. So again, just find what people are good at and find someone who's good at that sort of thing. I don't like the concept of it. I don't like the thought of removing healthy breast tissue and replacing with implants. It doesn't sit right with me. And it's not really something that I do. Plus minus technique, they call it. I've seen someone talk on it. He was from overseas. I don't know if anyone in this country does it. Maybe they do. I don't know if they're here and online. And if one does it, then please say by all means advertise your services, because there's someone here who's interested in it. But it's not my bag. So I don't do that because I just don't feel it is right. And I would say to you, look, accept the shape that you can get with a lift and reduction, because it's still a good shape and you can wear clothes and push them up and all that sort of stuff. But what we want is we want a happy patient. So we need to explain that to you pre-op. We don't want to be explaining that to you post-op once you've had your breast lift or breast reduction and they settle and we go, oh yeah, they always look like that. And you're like, well, hold on a minute, I wanted them up there. I'm like, oh no, you can't get them up there unless you have an implant. Well, you don't want to have that conversation post-op, because that's just awkward, and that's a lie. That's the route to an unhappy patient, and nobody wants that. So if you want them smaller or the same size, I would advise you not to have implants. Implants, in my view, are really good to make them bigger. Yes, they do give you more fullness in the upper pole, but I wouldn't use implants just for that reason. I would use implants if you want to be bigger and fuller. Happy days, then it's an implant. Maybe there'll be a lift or whatever, but then it's an implant. But if you want to be smaller or the same size and it's just the shape that you don't like, I would say to you, just have a reduction or a lift and accept the shape that you can achieve with those operations, and accept that that's concavity in the upper pole. When you take your bra off, the breast will settle, and it's a normal breast shape. It's how breasts normally look. So that's where I am. That's the side of the fence I'm on with the plus minus or the breast reduction and breast implants at the same time technique. But thank you for that. It's a good question. Now my little arrow has come. A question from Stories. Oh, look at that. Amber. So we've got the muscle. Do you do BBL surgery? My friend had one done abroad, but I don't want to travel that far because of the risks, etc. I do not do BBL surgery, but I do understand that people are doing BBL surgery. So BBL, Brazilian butt lift. I'm not sure if we're supposed to be calling it Brazilian butt lift, because I think Brazilian butt lift is maybe a certain way of doing it. So I don't do it, first of all, by saying that, full disclosure, I don't do it. But as I say, there are people doing it, and they're saying that you can do it safely. You can do fat grafting in the certain plane, and it is something that can be done. But I don't personally do. I just never really got into buttocks, as it were. They're just not really it's not really an area that I've got into. But I know that there are UK surgeons now saying that you can do it safely as long as you inject the fat very carefully and what have you. So that may well be the case, but I don't do it. And that reminds me, when that person asked that question, they said about the donut and the crescent lift, they said, and fat transfer. So yes, you can do fat transfer at the same time as a lift. I will do that, and I do that, and I do like doing fat transfers. The only thing I found with fat transfer is quite subtle, the volume increase. And again, if you're trying to get that fullness in the upper pole, it doesn't stay. It's natural. Any sort of natural tissue doesn't really stay. So you might have to do some fat grafting in the upper pole, but it just doesn't stay, and it settles. And it is good for a mild volume. So if there's a volume asymmetry, then yes, I think fat grafting is good. But for an augmentation, so to get a significant increase in volume, again, in my hands, I can't get enough fat in there to get a significant increase in volume. For me, I'm looking at about 80, 100, 120 cc's would be a good amount of fat graft into each breast. And that's quite a small, an 80 cc implant is quite a small, 100 cc implant is quite a small implant. So it's quite a subtle increase in volume. When you use implants, you can get 200, 250 straight off the, banged in. Whereas fat grafting, that would take 2, maybe 3 operations to get that in. So it's just not there yet for me in terms of breast augmentation or increasing the volume. It's good for other things like maybe putting over the top of implants if you've got rippling, or as I said, if you've got a mild asymmetry. But for pure augmentation, I don't think it's there yet. What do we got here? I'm losing track of the chat. JJ's losing. Hi, JJ. Sorry, I've been here the whole live. Was just cooking a pad thai and listening. Okay, good to know, Corin. Thank you. Hi, Jonathan. Hi, Claudia. Nice to see you here this fair eve. So, get myself comfy. Right, good. This is good, isn't it? So here we go. This is do my implants need to be FDA approved? So this is I did a blog post about this. Was it an email? Yeah, it's a blog post this week. Sometimes people ask this. To be fair, it's a bit less recently, but we in the past I had a lot of people asking me if they're FDA approved. Now FDA is an American classification or certification of implants. The Food and Drug Administration. It's got nothing to do with the UK. So that no, they don't need to be FDA approved. I think the reason people are asking is because a lot of the stuff online is American, and all the American surgeons are saying make sure your implants are FDA approved. In fact, are they? Maybe they're not saying that, because why would they say that? Because they have to be FDA approved to use them in America. Do they say that? So maybe they don't say that. But anyway, maybe they do say that, because you can't use a non-FDA approved. I don't think you can. Anyway. I think you have to use an FDA approved implant in the America. You cannot use a non-FDA approved implant in America. And that's right. I did a blog post and I talked about Creed 3 because I was watching Creed 3 and it had the British Board of Film classification, whatever certificate it was, 15 or whatever, or 12, I don't know what it was, whatever it was. And I thought to myself, this is this film might be classified different in Uzbekistan, it might be different in Russia, it might be different in China, it might be different in Australia, it might be different in Nicaragua. Different countries might have different classifications of this film, but does it matter? Because we just worry about what the British classification is. So what if they classify it 15 in America and 12 in the UK? Well, maybe that's interesting to know. They classified it higher, so maybe it is a top end of 12. Maybe it is useful, but it doesn't really matter that much because we just go on what the British classification is. So no, the implant, and there's very few implants are actually FDA approved in America. It's cost them millions and millions of pounds. They have to do a lot of work to get them FDA approved in America. So we have a thing called the MHRA, which is the equivalent organization that needs to be approve implants in the UK. So we have to. So all the implants are approved by a body in the UK, but the FDA is the American one, and so we use a lot of implants that are not FDA approved. So a lot of the implants that we use here are not FDA approved. Mentor are FDA approved. There's one called Sientra. I don't think you can get them here, Sientra, but they're FDA approved. Allergan were FDA approved when we used them in this country, but they've gone now. So there's the majority actually are not FDA approved, but they're all approved in the UK. So in answer to the question, they do not need to be FDA approved. When having a breast reduction, can you tell me what cup size I'll go down to? No. I mean, it's awful, isn't it? And to be honest with you, even when you're having a breast augmentation, and we know we're using a 250cc implant or a 320cc implant, we can't tell you what cup size you're going to be. It is not a precise science. And it's not a precise science because for two reasons. First of all, the cup size is based on the difference in your bust and your back size. So if it's an inch, it's an A, 2 inches B, 3 inches a C. So therefore, someone with a bigger back size will have a bigger breast and kind of still be a C cup than someone who's got a smaller back size, because 3 inches bigger for a smaller back size will be a smaller breast and 3 inches bigger for a bigger back size, but they'll both be a C cup. I don't know if that makes sense. So there is not something that's set that is a C cup or a D cup or whatever. We don't have a kind of template or a mold to say that's a C or a D, number one. And number two, you just know yourself. When you go to M&S, you're a C. And when you go to Matalan, actually, do Matalan sell closed? When you go to Primark, you're a B. Yeah. So they're different in different shops and different makes. So So it is not a precise science. And so sadly, no, we can't tell you what you're going to do. And I tell you now, a lot of people are not kind of wearing the right bra. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're not wearing the right bra. Well, as long as it's comfortable, but you get measured at 5 places, you'll get different, you get told different things. You wear a bigger back size, then you automatically will have a smaller cup size for the same breast that you got now, and vice versa, smaller back, bigger cup. So it's, you could easily wear a 32D or a 34C. Yeah, a bigger back, smaller cup, and in the same person. So it's very hard to. So you could say, "Oh, I went from a D to a C, and nothing's happened. You haven't even had surgery. You just changed the back size, just change where you got measured." So, so it's not a precise science. So what I do is I normally say, "Look, these are some photos of some cases. They're always smaller. They're always lifted. I'm trying to bring you into normal shops, basically, so you don't have to buy bras online and stuff. But I can't guarantee you. It's not I don't think anyone can." I don't think there's any plastic surgeons left on this here, but I don't think any of us can guarantee a final cup size. I think it's just not a precise science. So it is, unfortunately, a bit of a leap of faith, really, with everybody, with implants and with reductions. It is, sadly, you're spending all this money and you kind of really don't 100% know what cup size you're going to be. And it doesn't matter as well. Sometimes people come back and you say, "You're happy with the cup size?" "Yeah, I love it. Fantastic. Great." And they go and get measured. They're a B, or they're a C, or they're a D, or they're an F. I put implants in and they're an F. I'm like, "What? You're an F? Blimey, that sounds like they're massive," but they don't look that big. They don't look, what I would kind of think was an F, but they've been measured as an F. So don't worry what you get measured at. If you like them, you like them. If you don't like them, you don't like them. That's what's important. Are they in keeping with your frame? Do they look good? If they do, that's it. Don't worry. Don't let anyone make you unhappy by telling you they're this cup size. After having a lipoma removed on my hip, hold on a minute, when can I return to work? I'm a floor layer, but self-employed. Amy, I did. Right. Well, this is a good question because I did this yesterday. Was it yesterday? Was it? Yeah, Monday. Did this. So anyway, and I think he went back to work the next day, didn't he? He had the day off. Anyway, we'll pretend it doesn't already happened. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult when you're self-employed. Just generally speaking, going back to work is difficult. I think it's difficult in a way because you want to get back to work because you earn money when you work. But the good thing about self-employed is you can maybe manage your diary a bit better. And if you feel a bit uncomfortable, maybe go home early and things like that. Whereas when you're employed, you kind of have to go 9 to 5, So I think people who are employed are more likely to take time off than people who are self-employed. Not only because they, get sick pay, but also because when you go back, you kind of have to be, you have to do the job. They're not going to be very happy if you go back and say, "Actually, you know what, can I go home early? I don't feel right." They're going to be like, "Well, why didn't you take you shouldn't have come in if you're not right," sort of thing. So, yeah, so this was a fair sized lipoma, golf ball, I suppose, or egg size. And the good thing about lipomas is they're subcutaneous. They're lumps underneath the skin, so you don't have to take much skin out / any skin out. So you can just do an incision in the skin. So the skin's not closed tight. It's not like when you're taking a mole out or something like that when your skin's closed tight, or a skin lesion tattoo, something like that. Skin's closed tight, so you don't want to put too much tension on it. So there wasn't much tension on the wound. Sensible chap, needed to work. Fair enough. I just said it might make it swell a bit where the space where the lipoma was, than if he hadn't gone to work so soon. So the swell might be a bit more swelling, might take a little bit longer for it to settle. So sometimes it's a false economy going back to work so soon. I would say ideally a few days. If you could take a few days off, that would be ideal, especially if you're doing a manual job like a floor layer. But he's not doing carpets, which are, what did he say, stretchers, which apparently is quite hard. So he's doing hard floors, which is, I understand, maybe a bit better, I think. How do I find a good surgeon? What do I need to look out for? I'm just starting my research for a breast reduction, but I don't know what clinics are good or bad and whether the surgeon is qualified. I know, what a living nightmare. What you need is really, you need someone almost like a book. You almost need a book, of what to look out for, written by someone reputable, like a plastic surgeon or something. If only that sort of thing existed, I don't know. That's the sort of thing that you need. If only there was such a thing. That would be absolutely ideal. Just talking about the pros and cons. A reputable plastic surgeon kind of writing a book about it would be just what you need, wouldn't it? So I don't know. I don't know if anyone's done that. I don't know if anyone's actually written. Do you think anyone's actually taken time out of their day? And do you think anyone's actually, been that dedicated to go and actually write a book for the benefit of patients who are looking for a plastic surgeon? I don't know. I don't think anyone would be that selfless. I can't imagine anyone would have the skill, the foresight, and anyway, yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, I've written a book. Yeah. So, you get my book, Never Accept a Lift from Strangers, Never Accept a Lift from Strangers.com.co.uk, is it? And available in all good bookstores. Actually, no, it's not. I don't think it's available in any good bookstores, but Amazon. Anyway, yeah, so I've written a book on it. But in answer to your question, what do you look out for? Well, I'll tell you what you look out for. So breast reduction, first of all, you want a plastic surgeon. So you want a plastic surgeon. So that's how you get a plastic surgeon. FRCS Plast. There, can you see it? Oh, where's there? FRCS Plast. Anyway, that means you got the specialist fellowship in plastic surgery. So not just FRCS. So the Plast in brackets means plastic surgery. If they haven't got Plast in brackets, then they're not a plastic surgeon. If they've got ENG, that means FRCS England. So that's a much more basic qualification that I got 6 or 7 years prior to the plastic surgery one. So you get a basic one first, and then you get a specialist one. So don't let them say, oh, we're a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons or a member of the Royal College of Surgeons. That's not enough. They need to be in the specialist fellowship. And so the other thing you can do, you can check on the GMC register. If they've got a funny name like Staiano, you'll be all right. But if they've got a normal name, it's good if you can find out their GMC number, because you can check on the GMC website. My GMC number is 411-7214 if you want to check about me. If you go onto the gmc-uk.org, I think it is, and you put the GMC number in, or their surname, you can check whether they're on the specialist register. So they need to be on the specialist register for the specialty that you want them to be. So plastic surgeons will be on the specialist register for plastic surgery. So that's how you find out if the surgeon's qualified. Clinics, it's difficult because I used to say go to the local private hospital. Well, I still say it, go to your local private hospitals. The problem personally is that I used to work at the Priory and the Parkway, which are the two, the BMI or Circle as it is now, and Spire, but it's increasingly difficult to get into those hospitals. So plastic surgeons are now working outside of those private hospitals. It used to be that only the kind of non-qualified plastic surgeons worked outside those hospitals, but now a lot of fully qualified plastic surgeons are making their own facilities and actually working in them. So that's no longer a definite way of finding one, but certainly if you can find someone who works at the Spire and the BMI and the Ramsey or those big hospital groups, then they will be a fully qualified surgeon. Reviews, I think, is a good thing to look out for, although people talk about reviews. I don't know whether I think reviews is a good word of mouth. If you can get word of mouth, meet them, see what you think of them, ask them questions. Hopefully they won't be cagey or dodge your questions. What we got here, that person, JJ is your man, speaking from experience. There we go, your book, thank you, don't go anywhere else. There you go. Yeah. But yeah, there's lots of good plastic surgeons. Look, BARPS and BAPRAS. So BARPS is the aesthetic plastic surgery, so sort of more for sort of cosmetic-y things. So if you look at the BARPS website, that's another good way of finding someone, BAAPS. So look for a BARPS surgeon. Not all plastic surgeons are BARPS members or BAPRAS members, but all BARPS members are plastic, and all BAPRAS members are plastic surgeons. If that makes sense, it's voluntary whether you are a member of the association. BAPRAS is a bit more for kind of general for plastic surgery, who head and neck and melanoma and skin grafts and craniofacial, whereas BARPS is a bit more for the aesthetic plastic surgeon. So, but yes, those are the areas where you would be able to find a qualified surgeon, BARPS and BAPRAS. So, hold on a minute. Is fat transfer with uplift an option instead of implants? Here we go. Well, that's a funny question, isn't it? Is fat transfer with uplift an option instead of implants? So let's take fat transfer. Let's just address the uplift thing. Uplift is different to implants. Well, God, is it? On we kind of worms here. Well, generally, let's keep it simple. Implants are making them bigger. Uplift is making the shape different. So an uplift is if you've got a shape problem, if your nipple's sitting a bit low, if you've got a bit of a droop to your breast, that's when the uplift comes in. So kind of like a fat transfer with uplift is, yeah, no, I take it is a good question. Actually, I'll take that back. Start again. So yeah, okay, is fat transfer with uplift an option instead of implants? Yes, if for the right person, I guess. If you don't need an uplift, then, but you probably wouldn't be asking the question if you didn't need an uplift, then fat transfer versus implants, I've said earlier, I don't think it gives you the same sort of volume. So I think it's not really a credible option. Is uplift an option instead of implants? Now, the thing about implants is that they're really good at making them bigger. They do to a degree kind of stretch the skin. If you have got a bit of a droop, then implants can have a bit of a go at sort of kind of filling the skin. They don't do an uplift. So they're not as good as an uplift if you're just purely got a shape problem. If you've got droopy breasts, implants are not going to do as good a job as a lift. The problem is a lot of people don't want to lift because of the scarring and the complications, etc., which is completely reasonable. So if you don't want to lift and you haven't got much of a droop, it might be an option to consider implants. But if you have got a big droop, then implants aren't good because the implants will be here, the breasts will fall off them. But if you've got a mild droop, then implants of a certain volume, as long as you wanted a fair volume, that might do the trick. And then that sort of person who's got a bit of a mild droop, nothing drastic, would not need, fair size, quite big implants. They say, I don't want big implants. Well, that's not really going to sort out that mild droop problem. I only want to be a little bit bigger. That's not going to sort out the mild droop problem. So that might be your uplift and fat grafting. But again, I would say the uplift to sort out the shape. And I would question you about the fat grafting. I feel a bit anxious about the fat grafting because it is quite subtle, the results, and it is quite expensive. Fat grafting is quite an expensive operation. It takes quite a long time. You harvest the fat. You have to then process the fat before injecting it back in again. And so it does take quite a long time. So it is quite expensive. And the volume increase with fat grafting is quite subtle. So you have to be happy with that. Look at that. Pause due to poor connection. Sorry about that. I mean, that's internet for you, isn't it? I mean, in this day and age, a social media influencer like myself having paused for poor connection on their Instagram live, I should have a word with the internet providers to say, I need some dedicated bandwidth coming to this place because I've got people to serve. I'm serving the community here. I'm a face, I'm known. I've got, double, maybe not double digits, but double people times two. Well, I've got four. Let's be honest with ourselves. 4 people online here, on the gram, on the book, and these people need me. So I can't be having pause due to poor connection. Come on, internet providers, pull your finger out, sort out us influencers, and give us a bit of bandwidth. Take it from next door. They're just, watching Netflix and stuff. I'm doing work here. I'm doing community work here. Better than the hotel Wi-Fi. Well, to be honest, Corinne, maybe if I paid £5 for the premium Wi-Fi, the hotel would have been all right. But I was on the basic, to be honest with you. But yeah. Anyway, don't worry. I'll get on to my social media manager after this and say, look, this is disgusting. Pause due to poor connection. Anyway, so. Yeah, so is fat transfer with uplift an option instead of implants? I guess it is. Yeah, I guess it is. It is an option for someone with a mild droop who wants a mild increase in volume, because a mild droop, if you're having an implant, you might need a bit more volume that you will not be happy with. So if you're only a little bit bigger and you've got a bit of a droop, then a fat transfer with implants would be an option. Yes, it would. Wow. Okay, listen, Corin, you've got to get back to your pad thai. I got things to do because, clearly the schedule is full. I think as those of you know me, how busy I am. So that was a lot of good questions there. I hope I've covered everything. If you've got any questions, by all means, write it down. Message me on the book. Message me on the gram, phone, email, whatever communication. Write me a letter, whatever communication you prefer, and I will roll it over to next week, next Tuesday, same time, same place. Yeah, I'll be here next Tuesday. Yeah. So thank you for tuning in, everybody, both of you. And thanks, JJ. Antique Roadshow. No, Corin, please. Please. It's not Antique Roadshow. It's Antique Road Trip. All right. Antiques Roadshow is for old people. All right. Who watch that one on with Fiona Bruce or whatever on BBC One. I watch the one for younger people. It's on Channel 17. Right, 7 till 8, so at the end of this one, and then 8 till 9. Right, Antiques Road Trip, the one for the youngsters, cool cats like me. Antiques Road Show is for the fuddy duddies. Get it right, come on. Right, thank you, Jackie. Here we go. Dawny C's just joined, forgot the time. Nice one, Dawny. Yeah, okay. So don't worry, Dawny, you haven't missed anything. Right. Absolutely, 9 p.m. bedtime. You're absolutely right. Right, guys. Sorry, Dawny, I'm checking out of this. But listen, 7 o'clock next week. I expect you to be here on time. All right, none of this, 7:49 malarkey. See you next week. Have a lovely evening, lovely day, lovely week, lovely whatever, and I will very much look forward to seeing you along. Take it easy, Corin. Take it easy. Thanks.